Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the Awaken Alive podcast. I'm your host, Emily Ruth, and today I'm doing this podcast solo because I am talking about this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, The Golden Planet. It's a true report by the author who was physically abducted to another planet. The author is Michel Desmarquet, and unfortunately, he has died and passed away. He had this physical abduction in 80, what was it? 87, ended up completing the manuscript in 89, and the postscript was written in 93. So do with that what you will. But the crazy thing is, I found out about this book by watching another podcast, Journey to Truth podcast, and they had a man on who made it his life mission to spread awareness about this book. He actually met with the author, interviewed the author, and just made it his life work. He even has like a whole website that has all information about it, even like PDF downloads. You can also buy this book off Amazon, which I'll put all that in the link in the description down below. And so, yeah, that's how I found it out. Ordered it a year later, and then took me another year to read it. But here we are. So, a little bit of backstory. Michel is a French man. He lived in Cairns, Australia for a little bit, and this is where the abduction happened. He ended up getting abducted by the Thiaoubans, which live on the planet Thiaouba, which is very far away from Earth. And they, with the help of his tour guide slash teacher, Theo, he learns about Thiaouba, how the planets, how Earth came to be, first man on Earth, learned a little about Christ, learned a little about Jews, um, learned about auras and everything else that can come with the hits, and even colors. So I want to pinpoint on a certain chapter, and that chapter is called The Seven Masters in the Aura. So Theo and why this chapter is kind of important to me really to speak about. I think it's because it's something that we're going into, but we aren't. It's something we kind of know, but I feel like we need to implement more in our life because I feel like a lot of people would be a little bit more ease and more happy with themselves and others if we did. So, that being said, Theo hands him a robe. And it was chosen, and the colors were chosen for those of his aura. And that's why he was feeling so good. And if people on Earth were able to see auras, they too could choose colors which suit them and therefore enhance their feeling of well being. They make use of color rather than an aspirin. And so Michelle's like, well, what do you mean exactly? Well, it's like there are some times when you see people who are like their taste in clothes or the colors like don't really like suit them. And he's like, well, that's because of that. He's like, half the time the things you surround yourself with wearing, sometimes you don't feel good. Like sometimes you wear certain clothes, like, I don't feel good in this. It's because of that. But if you were to explain that, they was saying to like people, the vibrations of colors were in discord with their aura. No one would probably believe him, and being the 80s. So the humans really only believe in what they see or touch, but yet an aura you can see. And I really believe that we can see auras. We're just so out of touch that it just doesn't happen naturally for some anymore. So, fun backstory, my mom can actually see auras, and she's always been very openly about that. But with me, I was kind of jealous. I couldn't see. I was like, I don't know. Well, I ended up taking a workshop. It was for psychic and mediumship abilities. It was with Will and Allison Brown. So if you ever have the joy of working with them, it's a pleasure. Well, anyway, we took this workshop, and one of the practices we were doing is with auras, and we are just trying to see if we could see them. So my thing is, I can see auras. I can just see like the outline of them, and I can barely see the color. But one of those believe it with Allison, I saw this like crown. She was the only one I saw a crown with. So I was like, oh, I thought that was interesting. Cool, whatever. Didn't really think nothing else about it until I read this book. So when Theo talks about the auras, a lot of people only see like maybe a color of the aura, but actually the aura vibrates constantly with colors that vary. So some are going to show more than others, just depending on your intention and like your energy level. So some are going to be like more vibrant, some are going to be more dull. It just depends. So that explains why my mom can only see like one color. With that being said, I got a picture done of my aura and I found out I had three colors in my aura. Blue was the majority, then it was yellow, and then it was white in the center. So, with that all being said, I'm going to go to what Theo says. As I remember, I was talking about the little crown thing. She said you can also see around the head too is usually sometimes a golden halo, but it's only really obvious with the most highly spiritual people and in those who have sacrificed themselves in order to help someone else. So the halo resembles a golden mist, much like painters on earth depict the halos of saints and of Christ in their paintings, like in Renaissance and stuff. And some of the artists actually saw them. So that's what they depicted. And I was like, what? Wow. So Theo ends up going with Michel to meet the seven masters, and those are like the elderly people, or the elders, the very wise, a lot of knowledge, gave like maybe warnings. I don't know. It is called a prophecy, so take it for what you will. So one of the leaders suggests that technology should assist spiritual development and not confine people more and more within a materialistic world, as is happening now to your planet. To an even greater extent, your people are obsessed with a single goal, affluence. Their lives are concerned with all that pursuit of wealth entails: envy, jealousy, hatred of those richer, and contempt of those poorer. In other words, your technology is dragging your civilization down and pushing it closer and closer to moral and spiritual catastrophe, which I feel like has come true in a sense, and I feel like we're kind of there, especially with social media and TikTok and influencers and just everything that gets filmed, then something should not be filmed. Like people dying should not be filmed. People getting beat the crap out of each other shouldn't be filmed. Like catastrophic events or like people drowning, and some people go to rescue and just people are filming them rescue instead of actually trying to do something if they can. There's some instances where like somebody's getting eaten by a shark, you can't really do much, but I really don't think you should film that either. Uh, there's that. And also influencers. Just think for yourselves, people. That's all I gotta say. Just think for yourself. Just think for yourself. That's what I gotta say about that. Because, good Lord. Good Lord. And then the elder goes on to talk about the greatest danger concerns of materialism is that people of our planet seek money. To some, it's the meaning of attaining power. Others, it's meaning acquiring drugs. Yet to others, it's a way of possessing more than the neighbor possess. And that, I feel like that's just humanity in general. We all have those emotions of jealousy and envy, and we're like, oh, we wish could have that, or we're just like stuck in our own ways, or people are just money hungry. And I feel like a lot of attaining to power has a lot to do with money, especially with like politics and stuff, which one of the chapters goes into that a little bit more. And as they're talking about materialistic, they also go into the creator sought spiritual experiences through a material world. And I was like, huh, material world. That was interesting. That kind of blew my mind a little bit. I mean, yeah, I've heard like we're here to live a human life, whatever, but I didn't think like creator, God, source, like what have you created this world just to be material, you know? And he did that so he can embody a tiny part of his spirit into the physical entity. So I'm guessing that's within us, and that has to do with spirituality, but also universal law applies into that. And universal law is just how the universe works and how we're supposed to live type thing, like free will, going with the flow of nature. There's some other things. There's like vibration. There's like a whole thing. Y'all should look it up. It's pretty interesting. Um, there's like debates on some of them because some of them aren't accepted universally. That's just what I've been reading up on it. Uh, yeah. So so when it goes into that, it starts talking about the universal law, but then it goes into the astral body and how the astral body is connected to a higher self, and the higher self has many higher selves above that to connect to source. So they say that there is 9 parts. So there's like 9 cycles you're connected to with the higher self before it goes back to source, and that's just required in order for the spirit to evolve. And with that, with the higher self, it's very important because it helps you. It might cure illnesses and even resurrect the dead. And there are many instances of people declared clinically dead who are brought back to life in the hands of doctors who have abandoned all hope for them. You're also in constant communication with your higher self through the cerebral canal, which I'm not sure what that looks like, but I'll put it up here somewhere. It's basically a transmitter for receiving and sending special vibrations between your astral and your higher self. So the higher self is continuously monitoring you at all times. But that's not the only way it can communicate to you. It can communicate through your dreams, whether it's instruction, ideas, regenerating you in some way, replenishing spiritual strength, or enlightening in the regard to solutions to important problems. So sometimes if you wake up in the middle of the night and you had an idea or your thought, that could possibly be your higher self. So try to write those down. I'm not very good at writing them down all the time, as I should be, but it is what it is. Then it goes on to say that the astral body, when it completes its cycle, rejoins the next higher self and the next higher self until it's spiritually advanced to pass to another planet. So it can't really go forward or backwards. The more spiritually advanced you are, the more you benefit on a superior, so a higher level of planet or environment in a way. And it goes to say that because your astral body is really the thing in your physical body that recalls and notes all understanding acquired during the course of various lifetimes. And it can only be enriched spiritually and not materially. So with the astral body, it's kind of important that we surround ourselves with stuff other than material things. So like music and nature, good vibing people, as you say it, good vibes. I think that was a time where we're realizing that, but now it's kind of become like a toxic positivity thing, I think now. I don't know. Don't call me on that. um, so when the leader goes on to say more about pollution and the astral body, especially noise, and it's actually more harmful because we're not aware of it as we are with water and air. And they say that You can play music at 3 times too loudly, and they're subjecting their brains and their physiological and astral bodies to vibrations that are harmful. If they could see the damage that it has caused, they would vacate the thing quicker than if there was a fire. But vibrations don't only come from noise, they also come from colors. And they're just astonished that they don't really see that coming up in experiments and stuff in our field. And we pay no attention to that if there is a thing. Colors really influence us as human beings. And like they was saying, like we'd feel better. So they were saying, even like your walls and colors, certain points, you got to be aware what paint or wallpaper or color you're using, even in your bedroom, can affect you. So by matching the colors to that you're surrounded with for your aura, you can improve your health and maintain good health. And vibrations from these colors are essential for good for mental balance, exerting the influence even while you sleep. So I wonder if that's why, like sometimes, fashion palettes, like they tend to like go different ways. Like one time it was just like neon colors, and then the next time it was like muted, like dull earth tones, and then you got the pastels. I wonder if that had something to do with it. But I will say I totally agree that honestly, if you really listen to your body, you're kind of drawn to certain colors. And if you are, try to put that in your house because literally, like the first color I picked for my house was this color. It's like a yellow. I mean, this screen isn't doing it justice, but it's like a nice yellow. And it's like tea, green, yellow, something like that. And then sometimes on the light, it looks a little green. I'm very contracted to yellow and very um, attracted to blue and white. Definitely. I used to be attracted to black at one point, but I don't know. I don't know if your auras can change colors, but maybe they can. Because they were talking about in the book how when the leader was talking about certain things, his aura would change. So that may be the case. I guess it just depends on what you're talking about, what you're going through in life, stuff like that. It's just something to think about. Um, so we talked about noise pollution. All right. So with that, they go and talk about some other things, but I'm gonna skip a couple of a chapter or two, and then I'm gonna go to our so-called civilization. So these are kind of like from I want to say like the dangers that we're kind of aware of, but we're not aware of on Earth, the real dangers, and they're not talking about like nuclear bombs. They said the dangers do not lie in the death of the physical body as millions believe. The danger exists in the way in which one lives, which I think can be true if a lot of people believe in heaven and hell and sin and being good versus evil, like all that stuff. Um, they said the real dangers are in order of importance. First, it's money. Second is politicians. Third, journalists and drugs and one thing. And then the fourth is religions. So as regards to money, it's difficult to help constructively on earth if your whole system is based on it. And they gave an example, like if Germany needs 5,000 tons of Australian wood, it can't send in exchange for 300 Mercedes and 50 tractors. So like the bartering system, our system just doesn't work that way, and therefore it's difficult to improve it. But they were like much can be achieved within political parties and politicians. So they were saying they really wish to illustrate the dangers that are inherent in electing leaders on basis of political bias rather than their ability to lead people honestly in appropriate directions. They give an example of the government of Mu, which is like on a different continent, which the book goes into it if you ever get it. But they said this is to place a head of state of leader whose unique goal is the well-being of the people. And I feel like sometimes politicians lose that aspect. Um, a leader is not motivated by false pride or party and personal pecuniary ambition to do away with political parties and the resentment, the grudges, the hatreds that go with him, and to hold out your hand to your neighbor, to accept him and work with them, regardless of the differences you may have. He is, after all, in the same boat with you. He is part of the same village, the same town, the same nation, the same planet. And they were saying when you push away your neighbors, you aren't ready to help even those who don't like you. They said disintegration is what that's called, really. And it's happening a lot more through hate and violence, which I feel like is like at the forefront of media and everything else. I mean, you got wars going on, you got divided political parties, belief systems here in America. I mean, I don't know so much about other countries' political stuff, but I know like farmers are not getting along with their governments for uh farming regulations and stuff. So I know that's happening, but it's just wild that nothing gets nothing comes from hate and violence, as they say. And they literally say violence does not pay and never will. The solution lies rather in love and the cultivations of mind. Really, love. You hear that love, but love is so hard, I think, to love somebody that you might not really care to. But I feel like if we would just put all that aside and see human, we might be better. I don't know. I feel like life on this planet would be a lot less better if we didn't have violence and hate in the world. But we are human. So it goes after politicians, you have problems of journalists and reporters. There are some among them, although unfortunately rare, who try to do their job of disseminating information honestly and sincerely, attending carefully to their sources. But they're saying mostly it's really alarming to them that most journalists and reporters only seek sensationalism. So like what gets the click type thing. They said also television stations to screen more and more scenes of violence, and they're very disgusted by that. Um, they believe that people have the responsibility to study the psychology and therefore not if they knew how it affect the human behavior, they may have not done that back then. I don't know. I mean, we still do it today. Um, they were saying that leaders of the country and the journalists, in fact, anyone who, by their position, can exert influence of the people, have enormous responsibility towards millions of people who are no more and no less than his fellow creatures. So, like I was saying, they're um, journalists and staff are more capable of doing much good when they alert the public attention to danger and injustice, which should be their main function. But the way they do it, such as but to return the need for such high profile people. So like they give an example. They say a young man just taken a rifle and killed 7 people, including 2 women and 2 young children. That like, and then they compared the murderer to, they name the murderer. They say like he's like the hero of what when they say the hero, the most popular heroes of violent modern films. And then in return, a madman sees the report and wants to do the same thing to get his known attention. Um, they believe that should that they believe that there should be something else done about that. They believe that you should say, instead of doing all that, is just speak 2 or 3 lines. So we have learned of a murder of 7 people by an irresponsible lunatic. This murder occurred in whatever location in a sorry event in the country that considers itself to be civilized, full stop. And they were saying, well, why would they? They're like, well, Michelle was like questioning, well, why, why all that happening? They're like, well, there are many worthwhile things to show, like people get to improve the psyche instead of like brainwashing or bringing down, like, the emotions of people. Like rescue a child who was drowning, give an assistance support, which I also think can be twofold because you know how there was like a time where people on the internet were like filming to be like being kind to people. And I say kind loosely because I'm like, are you really being kind or are you really just doing this just to get views? That's just my opinion. Anyway, and then he was saying, well, they basically depends on sensational news they contain. So if they don't get that, they're like it goes back to the world root of all evil, the money. And they said the greatest dangers to humankind are ultimately of a psychological rather than material nature. Which I think if you think about it, I mean, a lot of things, the way we talk, the way we feel, it all has to do with how we think up here, and see and hear and feel. Anyway, so then they go into talking about drugs and how it also directly attacks the astral body. And they say the astral body can only be harmed by 2 things, drugs and the vibrations occasioned by certain kinds of noise. So, considering only drugs, it must be understood that they have an influence that is totally against nature. They remove the astral body from the physical body. So, it should only be with either in the physical body or with the higher self, which is also a part. When drugged, it removes that through artificial and distorts judgment. And they were saying that if they're under for so long, the astral body can decline or it can become saturated with false data. So recovery for the astral body can take several lifetimes. So they were saying drugs should be avoided at all costs. So Michelle had a question and was like, hey, like you gave me a drug to like put my astral body out to experience that. He was like, so I don't understand. Did you do me a disservice? And they were like, no, we didn't. Like, no, not at all. Like we used a drug, but it wasn't a hallucinogen. So I'm guessing for drugs for them is like hallucinogens. They were saying in order to assist a process which could occur quite naturally with adequate training, it is not a drug that blinds and therefore presents no danger to your astral body. Effects are very short term. So I'm guessing drugs, they're talking about hallucination, affects them, blinds them, displace the astral body somewhere else. I guess so. So I'm guessing for them, like I wonder if mushrooms and like ayahuasca and like uh acid and stuff are like, no. I'm kind of curious. Because I know that's been like a topic lately, the shrooms and the ayahuasca. Kind of curious about that. I'm sure acid and man-made drugs aren't, the hallucinogens aren't that great either, I'm sure. Um, hmm. Then it said, return to the problems of your planet. Michelle, the solution depends on love, not money. It causes people to rise above hate, resentment, jealousy, and envy, and that each person, whether he be street sweeper or community leader, put his neighbor before himself, offering his hand to everyone who needs it. And I feel like, excuse me, we should take the advice of these Thiaoubans because I feel like we have disintegrated into hate for the most part, or at least that's what the media is showing. Um, like into a more divided country in America, at least. So if we just put that all aside, I feel like we'd be all right. But you never know. Um, hmm. So one other thing when I was talking about that the author he let's talk about how we should think for ourselves. Well, the author, I'm just gonna read you like this little two paragraphs because this can think think for ourselves. It's very interesting, and I'll share my experience when I read this. So I knew a charming, so he's talking about stuff. And then he says, he's telling a story. I knew a charming little shopkeeper who had a problem with his cash register. I arrived while it was open being repaired. He sold me two articles at $1.38 each. It took him about 3 minutes to work out the total on a piece of paper, and he ended up giving me $2.34 change from the $5 I had handed him, simply because he lost the habit of making such a simple addition, even on paper. He trusts the machines, as do thousands of others like him, and people put their trust in credit cards and computers. They're wrong because in practically they're no longer thinking for themselves. They're letting the financiers add up for them. And practically they are no longer in control. So let's do a little experiment together and you'll see what I'm talking about. He's like, are you ready? All right, a few lines up. I did an addition for you. I explained that I had brought $2.76 worth of goods, and that the shopkeeper handed me $2.34 in change from $5. Fortunately, you weren't the shopkeeper, as I would have made you lose 10 cents. I was like, what? I did that deliberately to catch you out. If, however, you are among those who stopped when reading the paragraph to check the sum, that indicates you are not easily led. If you fall into the second category of those who didn't check, you better change your attitude now. You are a human being containing a divine fragment. Be proud of it and stop behaving like sheep. And unfortunately, I didn't check it. I just kept reading because I was like, oh, I'm almost to the end of this book. So don't be sad if you didn't check it. It's okay. So when he said that, I really went back and checked just to make sure. He was correct. But yeah, don't be a sheep, I guess. So yeah, the book was pretty interesting. I hope y'all read it, and if y'all read it, tell me your thoughts, likes, dislikes about it, and let me know. With that being said, I'm Emily Ruth, and I hope y'all have a fabulous rest of the year. Well, not the year. I'm gonna be back next month with two fabulous guests. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Awaken Alive podcast. If you liked that episode, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Also, feel free to share with a friend or family member. And if you want to listen to more episodes, head over to emilyruthhealer.com, Spotify under Awaken Alive, or YouTube, Emily Ruth Healer.